In the Round is all about highlighting musicians on their music journey. Whether they're local, regional, or touring coast to coast, they all have great stories to tell. We're looking for the stories that allow us to get to know them in a different light. The funny, the heartwarming, all the lows and highs, and of course the music that was born from that journey. Hey, I'm Dee, I'm a musician, I'm a music lover, and I'm your host. Let's jump right in. So it's like, because most bands, as you know, when they tour through, they bring someone with them, like bigger, bands that are on a tour.
Yeah, management usually hooks that up.
Yeah, but because they're like going to meet that tour, it like gives an opening for a local band to open along the way, right?
Oh,
like that
man,
seems
that's
like what's happening, So I'm like, how do we do more of those? Like, don't just fly to us and start your supporting, like tour your way through.
Well, I think to me, a lot of that's just on the venue. I think there's some, there's some like, well, management's bringing their own. It's like, well, then carve out 20 fucking minutes for an opener.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You can it's your venue. You can make it happen. Plus, if you've got a local, they're going to bring a really good crowd because they're going to be opening for a national. You're only going to sell more tickets.
Yeah. I know. Dick Prall, welcome to In the Round.
Well, thank you very much, Diana.
So
good to be here.
Happy to have you. Dickie, Dick Prall,
Either
all
one.
the names.
All of them. Richard, if I'm in trouble, Richard Phillip.
Ooh, I'm going to use that one. I'm going to save that.
Yeah. Oh, great.
So, Richard Phillip. I would hope that a lot of people listening to this already know who you are because I know I'm a fan.
Okay, well, thank you.
And I think you're incredible. But just in case they don't know, I was trying to think of how do we describe Dick's music? How do we describe Dickie? And I wrote down self-deprecating indie rock. Would you agree with
Sure. Yeah, I think that's good. It's how I live my life daily. So that makes all the sense.
That's what I thought. I just had the pleasure of getting to see you at XBK play this fantastic show. And that's actually why I left self-deprecating in there because that's what I love about your stage presence. You're constantly like, well, this is probably going to suck, but let's roll. And then you just knock it out of the park. So
right on. Well, I got a great band behind me, so it's easy to do.
Yeah. And this is like a newer kind of crew come together.
Absolutely.
A little bit.
Absolutely. So Ben Mars on bass, Brian Vanderpool, who owns Golden Bear and who produced and engineered and mixed the new record. And then Jay Schneider on guitar, and then his brother Cam Schneider playing auxiliary percussion. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Schneider Brothers.
I know.
That's
it's
great.
Very cool. Hopefully they'll all stick around. I won't annoy them so much that they'll eventually just bounce. I'll show up at a gig and no one else in the band is there.
They're out.
We all had a thing. Sorry.
No, they love. That was one thing. Because I knew that this was kind of a newer group and you've brought these amazing, they're all incredible musicians individually and play with a lot of groups. But the energy in that room, like it felt like you guys have been playing together way longer. And I think that's their own enjoyment in the music that you're making, that came through.
Well, good.
And then the pleasure of you getting to hear it all come together, and I feel like that came through.
Well, good. It was a fun day. I was, as always, and you've heard me say this before, I pretty much black out the first 3 to 4 songs. I don't remember what's really going on. And then I can kind of settle in, and it's just fun to, kind of look around and see the band themselves enjoying it. I mean, we busted our booties to really, put together a good performance. Brian's very good at really musical direction and like, hey, let's take a moment. Let's work on this vocal part, make sure it's tight, and the devil's in the details. And I'm also try to be as much as a perfectionist as I can without annoying folks. The latter part never actually comes to fruition. I do annoy them regardless. But it's cool to work. It's cool to work with really professionally minded people who really care and want to put the time in, and not just we'll just do a rehearsal and come out. I mean, we go out to Ben's and in his farm out in, is it pronounced Adele? I feel bad when I'm.
Yeah,
it is
Adele.
Okay.
Adele.
Yes,
not Adele.
All right.
Hello.
Well, we also have like Madrid here,
it's
right?
Adele. Yeah, just everything's wrong. Just whatever the wrong
Except
way you
for
think
Des Moines.
it is.
If you go to Illinois, it's Des Plaines.
Yeah, right.
Which doesn't make any sense.
There's a Versailles.
Apparently, they hate the French
Missouri.
in Des Plaines.
Versailles. Yeah. Midwest in general, we hate the French. We haven't recovered from that old purchase.
We haven't recovered from the purchase
Too
yet.
soon.
Too soon still?
Yeah, still.
Just a couple hundred
years. You mean Steve?
Oh, wow. You're flexing.
I can't actually speak French. No, but you touched on something because you told me this yesterday that you black out the first few songs, and we were hanging out with a mutual friend who's like, "Wait, what? You still get nervous?" And I thought it was a really kind of fun moment because as someone like, let's call us both seasoned, just
I've been at
for
it for
ease
a
of
while.
conversation. Yeah. You would think it's the riding the bicycle, it's the muscle that you work, and then but it's still, I think
No.
it's healthy to still have that little bit of adrenaline that kind of
Yeah.
either makes you black out or, kind of show up
Yeah,
differently.
I think it's important to, hold on to your humility. First, have it. And we're also Iowans. I think that does play in it. There's not of like, it's something I had to learn to be kind of more assertive or confident as I moved. I was in Chicago for almost 20 years, and that's where I really was cutting my teeth. Was in that amazing city. So I remember moving there, and Josh Shapiro, one of my very, very close friends who was also a producer of mine, engineer, since passed, sadly. The last record he did was with me and Pat Sansone, his studio partner. Pat's from Wilco, so it was a wonderful thing. We actually recorded it here in Iowa at the barn, right?
Oh,
the Magic Barn.
Magic Barn.
But I remember when I moved to Chicago and met Josh, he kind of made fun. He's like, you sound like a sweet farm kid, OG and gosh.
Oh my God.
And that dissipated
Gee
quickly.
golly whiz, I'm so tickled you're all
right,
here.
Yeah. Oh golly, thanks for having me.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. And that eventually all went away, and then I probably went too far. And
I was gonna say, then it was like hard-boiled
cursed.
detective. You're
Yes.
like, hey,
Yeah.
welcome to the show. I don't give a about you.
Right, exactly. This is a
ahead,
family show. I can't swear. Okay. So yeah, I think, and how I was, how I was raised, and I think how a lot of us were raised, with that humility and the modesty, hopefully sticks around and is genuine. But yeah, like stepping up every time. I would much rather, as I said yesterday, I would much rather not be a headliner. I mean, in the fantasy world that you have as a musician, that you want to headline Madison Square, or whatever, Bonnaroo, blah blah blah. But it's nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
To get up and and then we had fantastic, artists ahead of us. Like Andrew Hoyt and his band played, and then Neil Anders and his band played. Yeah. So, there's a lot on the line to not come up in there and take a crap. And I've seen it before with other bands where, national acts where you see the band prior
the opening
is amazing, and then the national comes out, or the one that they're supporting is like 3 or 4 songs and we're kind of out of here, and I won't cite any names so I don't get blacklisted in the industry, but it's just it's a lot, to think about how you're going to perform, but then not think about it because you want it to be organic.
You want to be in the moment. Yeah. And I think that's just a dichotomy that I find really interesting as an artist, because it's also the thing where I feel like it's easier to play for 500 strangers than 5 people that you know well.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. Absolutely.
You're like, they're judging me. They see me all the time, but they're judging me. And then 500 people are like, I don't care if you're judging me because I don't know any of you.
Exactly. I'll cite an example of that. Actually, the first time I played for a really large crowd, it was when the band was called Starch Martins, and we were opening for Michelle Branch, and she had just popped, and this was in Cedar Rapids at the Freedom Festival, and so it was like 7,000 people there. And I was like a child, like I loved it.
Yeah.
And the week prior, we'd probably played for 35 people in Rockford. And, and I remember being on stage and we're just rocking our booties off. And like, I would run to one of the stage and like raise my hand up and then like, and then I was like, the power. I was like, I'm Bono, sorry.
Yeah.
But it just that adrenaline was pretty amazing to feel. But I also I remember on stage, I just kind of went to, to both, I couldn't say it to the drummer, but to Nick Bell, AKA Chooch, the bass player, and then Paul Stemner, who was the lead guitar player. I was like, we're going to play for 35 people again just a couple days after this. Like soak it up and have fun.
Seriously,
And we did,
Yeah, it was probably
great.
a great show because there's just like nothing to lose element.
Yeah, absolutely.
Way,
absolutely. So it was really, really cool.
Right. Okay, I want to talk. So obviously we know each other, but I want to talk a little bit about the trajectory because I know about these different things you've done in your life. You work for Wilco, you did these things, lived in Chicago, but you're born and raised Sheffield, Iowa. So you're Iowa, right?
Born in Hannibal, Missouri.
We won't hold that against you.
I know. I was there for a whole year. And then my family kind of moved a bit around in Iowa. So we were in Mason City for a spell, and then my father passed away when I was very young, 4. Right. And so when my mom remarried a few years later, we wound up in Sheffield because of that. So then from like 7 on, I was in Sheffield.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about, since we're all the way at just 7, when did you start playing guitar?
Oh, I was very late bloomer. So I didn't pick up a guitar till I was 25.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we skip way ahead in the journey. So then what happened between age 25 and you working for Wilco? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah. So I put my first record out. I just started, and I was really, I had a really great friend and great partner in music, Quentin Duarte, super unique guitar player and very, extremely indie, very anti-industry, which is great. I mean, that we all kind of were from that place, right? And so he bought me a chord book and he circled like 4 chords. He said, learn those basic ones and then throw that away, then make them up. And that's exactly what I did. So I just kind of made up chords as I went to kind of figure out, how I wanted to be a writer. And so my first record came out then when I guess I was almost 26 when I started playing guitar. And then 29 is when my first record came out under Dick Prall Band. Terrible name.
Your name, terrible name, obviously.
It's just a terrible name. Yeah. And so from there, some good things happened. Got a great review and like No Depression and had some label interest and things of that nature. And we won't need to go into all the near misses, but they're there.
This is what we do. We talk about the lows and the highs. No, keep going though.
Yeah. And then, so I didn't, then I put my second record out under Starch Martin's and, that there was some cool things going on there. So I was doing, a lot of music, working as well.
And you'd moved to Chicago at this point?
I moved to Chicago, right before I put out my first record. Okay. So, but I recorded it in Iowa City. So we actually were living in the suburb of Chicago called Naperville, and then it was only like a 3-hour drive to go back and record and play with the band and do gigs and all that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of my thing, just like making records. And I toured a lot, like about 2.5 years on the Starch Martin's record.
Wow.
And then I kind of got burnt out. And one of the near misses, like I got signed onto, it wasn't even like signed, it was really represented by someone in John Mayer's camp, and that he was too busy counting his John Mayer money. So he didn't really do a lot for me personally and some other artists that were in his,
got kind of burned,
or in his stable, if you will. Yeah. Which, whatever. And that, it sucked because there was all these things being promised and all these, I'm sure a lot of artists out there can absolutely relate. Right. And,
trigger warning. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Deal with it. Suck it up, man. You can do this. And so I was kind of like pulling myself out of it. Just felt, burned out and what's the point of all this? And I'll never forget my daughter was, I think it was like a couple years later because that was 2001. And then, so right before I did my next record, which didn't come out until 2005. So I was very serious about giving it all up. But I'll never forget, I was talking to my wife at the time, and my daughter was just a few feet ahead of us. We're just walking around Chicago, and I'm having this conversation about leaving the music industry. And my daughter turns out, she's like, "Dad, I heard what you said. I'm sorry, I was listening." Which I was like, okay, that's no big deal. I'm like, "You little spy."
For once.
Yeah, exactly. No shit. So anyway, she's like, "You can't give up music. You love music."
This is a movie moment. This is like, and then in the plot, the daughter turns around and says, "Daddy, no."
Yes, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
But the thing was, she's like, "You know what? John Bon Jovi's still playing." And I said, "Honey, I don't have the success that John Bon Jovi has if you were to decide to retire." First of all, I was like, "John, like she's listening to like the Shins and Death Cab with me. She's not listening to John Bon Jovi." But
also, who includes the John still? Like, excuse me. She's like, no, I know his full name.
Maybe she was following his
John
solo
Van Der-
career. I don't know. As a 7-year-old or however old she was. Yeah.
Okay. And you're like, damn right.
Yeah.
Is John still doing it?
So I'm gonna do it.
Mr. Jovi?
Absolutely. So I obviously I continued to do it, and I didn't start working with Wilco until 2011. So my old tour manager in front of house became their monitor guy, because when I was doing the Starch Martins record, Ken Coomer, the original drummer from Wilco, they were recording Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, and I was at the Loft, and I was at Rax Tracks recording Dressing Up the Failure, and Rick Barnes knew Ken and said, hey, can you come in and play some drums on this? So he played on like 3 songs, and he was like, I really like this record. You send it to me when it's done, or can you send me the what you have moving forward? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, hey, I would love to mix this record. So I went down to Nashville and we mixed the record, and again, that's kind of how I ended up with the John Mayer thing, because someone had sent the record to him. Blah blah blah. I don't even know how it's happened. It was very convoluted.
A lot of connections of just being like talking to people, being in those circles, being where you were.
Absolutely.
Being the person that you are, though. Like,
thank you.
Again, you have a lot of charisma and a lot of like great singing and guitar playing.
Okay,
okay.
We're done with that part.
This is true. Like, it's because we talk about that in other episodes about like you got to be a good hang. Like you got to
absolutely.
And that I think leads to like part of it.
Yeah, and it should be fun,
people,
right? I mean, that's ultimately like I take what I do seriously. I just don't take I don't take it all seriously, if you will.
Can't take it too seriously.
No, exactly. So anyway, so Jason Tobias is his name. He ended up working for Wilco as their monitor guy, because I was like, of course, like go work for those guys, duh. Yeah. Then he shortly became their tour manager, and then in 2011 he contacted me and said, hey, you should come on board. I'd like to hire you as like the assistant tour manager. And so I was like, and I was touring solo, and it was going terribly, just broke and sleeping in the car,
such a hustle,
stuff like that. So I jumped at the chance, and it was lucrative, financially, and it was fun and all the things. So I was only with those guys, started in 2011, and then I was out of there by January of 2014. So
okay, yeah.
So
but a stint that then I feel like again that solidified some connections, and
Absolutely.
maybe just kind of reinvigorate, like getting to work in the music industry and hang out with people playing music. But then maybe that sort of reignited.
Oh, absolutely. And to watch them perform, I mean, they're incredible, and to see them still have all the joy that they have while they're doing it. And it's studying it. I mean, then I kind of became a student of their live shows and really kind of, obviously put my eye towards what they were doing. And I think that helped me out tremendously, and obviously built really good relationships, especially with Pat Sansone, who eventually did, we did a singles series. We did like 3 singles back in the spring of 2012. And then he did I did my next record in Cedar Rapids with Tim King, which became the Dickie record, the first actual Dickie record, self-titled. Yeah. And the reason I went by Dickie is because my mom had passed, and that was the last thing I heard her say was my nickname. Dickie Bird, actually, but I dropped the bird. So anyway, I didn't want to come off like Rafi or something. So working with those guys was fantastic, and and learning a lot about the business. I worked for prior to that, I'd worked for a subsidiary of Sony, their distribution company called Red Distribution. So I was there for a couple years, kind of learning about distribution and just trying to soak up the business as much as I could.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's rare that artists are on both sides. Like you got to work both sides of it, kind of the back end and the front end of that.
Yeah,
and kind of see where you fall. But that all like plays into what we're talking about showing up and performing and being prepared that way, but also just making sure, like have good equipment, just like invest in those things because it is important and it shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't need like the most high end stuff by any stretch. It's just like make sure it's taken care of, make sure it's in order.
Test your cables before you
show
up at the club.
Exactly. Like my gear looks like I have beaten the total crap out of it, but it's functional, and I make sure.
I was gonna say, we were just looking at your Taylor guitar, which has like cracks that have been fixed and different things, But again, the soul of a guitar. I was talking to Abby Sawyer about this. Like sometimes you pick up an instrument and you're just like, oh yes.
Oh, absolutely. That's how I have that guitar. I think I was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at the time. I wasn't living there. I had a day off. and went to 16th Avenue Music, and I played, I mean, at least a dozen guitars, if not more. I mean, Taylors, Gibsons, Martins, Laramie's, like all of it. And I was intending to get a Gibson, but the Taylor that I played, it just had its thing, and I was like, all right, it's me and you, kid. And that was that. But I do absolutely. Like, it's, you know, I think people go to kind of their brands. I think there are, you know, two specific brands in the industry, for guitars, which I understand. Their vintage stuff I love, less so maybe the newer manufactured stuff. But again, not naming any names, but I play Godin, and I fell in love with it and was introduced to it by Nels Cline from Wilco, the lead guitar player. Yeah. So it was funny because we talked about it, and he was like, I can get you one, blah, blah, blah. And so I was going to pay for, you know, my guitar, and it was my birthday, and it was sitting in my bunk, or lying in my bunk, and I was like, oh, great. And so I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And I went to go pay him. He's like, no, happy birthday, man. That's for you. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, I mean, great. Just all those guys are all around really, really stellar folks. And then a few months later, he introduced me to his Godin rep.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry. Godin.
Godin. I was going to say, lean into the French. Okay, I want the title of this episode to be All right. They'd be like, what? This literally is no tie. Anyway.
So and then so I've got, you know, an endorsement deal with those guys, and, you know, so I don't have to pay full price. And so then my main guitar, which I call Pancake.
I was going to ask if there was a name.
Oh, yeah, Pancake and Chubby.
Oh,
yeah, Chubby's the fat jazz box, and then oh my God, and I love pancakes. It's one of my favorite things to make: blueberry peanut butter pancakes.
Oh my God! Oh wait, together? Wait.
Yeah, and then throw some maple on there. It's amazing.
Again, we need the In the Round cookbook. I've said this like every episode.
Oh, really?
I think we need to do it. Actually,
that's a great idea.
Yeah. The guitar player Chase in Lady Revel is like, he's from Kentucky and does straight up like home cooking for them, like desserts and stuff.
Cam was telling me that he's like this amazing cook and whatnot.
This is a sub community, subreddit that I'm going to create.
Hello Marjorie is an experience-focused bar in the heart of downtown Des Moines, Iowa. We serve house, classic, and new classic variation cocktails to go along with damn fine times. Choose between a Marjorie, an editor's note, a house old-fashioned, or a bee's knees, an espresso martini, a penicillin, and many more familiar and unique cocktails. Named one of USA Today's 2024 Best Bars in America. Join us at Hello Marjorie, and let's start the night right, shall we?
Okay, so something else I want to talk about in terms of you being a businessman, into business. Right. What I love is, so again, we met, when was Rocket Susie? I mean, we've come to find out that our circles actually could have overlapped several times. We know some similar people randomly. But one thing that I remember, exactly. We played a festival together in Spencer, Iowa, Rocket Susie, which was super fun. And it was supposed to be outdoors, but it was raining. We had to go inside, and there's this weird like church sort of converted thing where everyone was. And so there wasn't really great sound setup, and you were just like, everyone gather around, get in a circle. And you guys just played acoustic, and everyone was silent, and it was so beautiful. And I have this, that's like one of my initial memories is like, Dickie's in this church, like singing. But fast forward
my skin was burning when I was there.
Exactly. We were all kind of sizzling while we were in there. No. But then fast forward to you open up a bar. You come back to Iowa. You open up a bar called Dick's Tap and Shake, which is just seriously my favorite name ever. I think the first time we played there, I could not stop making jokes about it. And everyone was like,
of course, that's
you're just
what it was there
shticks. But so the host country got to play there a couple different times. One before you had the side room, and then a second time when you had that. And I know it has since ceased to be in existence, sadly, but I just find that trajectory so amazing. And I think it's so cool that you were trying to create a venue, you know, for that mid-level artist who could come through and have like an amazing listening room or sort of a rowdy bar time, you know, depending on the vibe.
Absolutely.
And it was incredible. And so when you stopped working with Wilco, you said 2014, and then was that when you moved back?
In 2016. So I moved, So part of the catalyst of me moving back was my mother And my stepfather passed away like 3 weeks apart from each other in
so much loss.
2013.
I'm
Yeah,
so
crazy,
sorry.
man.
Yeah.
And I toured a lot, and if I wasn't out with Wilco, I was out doing my own thing. So I missed a lot of birthdays and weddings and reunions, like all those things that kind of keep you ingratiated in your family. And so I romanticized, I'll come home and I'll see my family more. I saw them about as much as I do when I live in Chicago. But,
Spoilers.
yes,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Love you guys. You suck. But
I remember why I toured all the time.
yeah, exactly. I'm going back on
Okay,
tour.
Uncle Fred.
Yeah,
Okay. Bye.
Uncle Fred. You still owe me $20. Dead or not, I want it
He's
back.
like, well, you broke my window in 1960.
Exactly. Well, he deserved it. So yeah, it was a fun, daunting adventure, as you can imagine, because I'd never delved in that world before, and I was really proud of the music venue that we put together, and it just I think my expectations weren't in line with necessarily the community. As far as like, I just wanted to do original music. I'm like, you guys, everybody else can do their cover band stuff or tribute bands and all, like, but let's have a place where, artists like the host country can come play and thrive. And, even, I spent a lot of time talking to the artists in the community. What do you think about this? And like, oh my God, it'd be great, blah, blah, blah. But, great place for us to hang and community. And like, none of those people showed up.
Oh God.
So it was strange in that regard.
Yeah.
So it's, and that's, I'm not saying like, well, because they didn't show up, that's why the bar died. But I mean, it certainly didn't help that it was a struggle when folks would be like, I mean, at first we did a $10, cover charge. And then I was like, well, so I'll pay out of my own pocket then, and I'll charge $5 just for, to offset the cost. And like the cover idea, just the idea that someone had to pay to see music, like was very much resisted. And it just got to a point where I was like, well, this is ridiculous. And so, I kind of clearly got disgruntled by the fact that I wasn't feeling that support and that love. And don't get me wrong, there was a very much a core group of folks who were amazing and really, put forth the effort to help keep that spot open. And it just couldn't happen. And at some point I was like, it's not worth it.
Right.
So yeah, we should.
And it probably took time away from you being an artist. I think that's what's
absolutely.
hard. Like the more you get involved in building the scene, which is something, as you know, is important to me. The further away, though, a lot of times it takes you from actually creating. Oh, and so I'm trying to balance that all the time because I say yes to too many things. But that's I wondered about that too. And you don't want to put yourself on the bill every other week. Like, oh, he's playing this. Okay.
No, I played one private show because I'd been asked to open for Jimmy Newquist from Caroline Spine. So we did like a private show that was put together. So I did it, and that was fun. But that wasn't my playground. That was other people's playground. I had other places to go and to be able to do my thing.
And then somewhere in there you released Dickie, self-titled.
I did. So released that moved there in 2014, released it in 2015, and then the bar opened in 2016. So which is a great record. Thank
you. And then 2019 is when Minus Thieves came out. I have that on vinyl.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. What I love, like going back, we talked about Dick Prall Band and Starch Martin and things like that. But the more recent records, and I think where the trajectory of the next record, which we'll talk about in a second, there's just the sound is so fleshed out. Like it's so there's a warmth to it, and like just something I don't know what was missing from the earlier records in my ear. Right. But when I they sound great too, but when I listen to Minus Thieves or Dickie, I'm just like, oh, I think it's like you were settling into your sound.
I 1,000,000% agree.
Yeah.
And I know like the record Fizzle Buzzy, I think is a great example of me trying on a lot of kind of different hats from song to song.
I mean, the album title alone.
Yeah. So,
you always have the best.
So, well, the album title, the brief story on that is my daughter, I had a song on the Starch Martin's record, so the record prior, called Stay Little Baby, which is a song to my daughter, and which is about her growing up and eventually thinking I'm a moron and doesn't want to hang out with her dad.
We've reached that now, right?
Which happened, and then she came back around as an adult to think I'm semi-cool enough to hang out with. So I had no song on that record that was dedicated to my daughter, and I always like to have some thread when I make a record that she's represented, if you will. And so she was pretty young, so that record was 2005, so she would have been like 6. So she had like this little kit to make bugs with, like these plastic, like so you make these funky looking
Yeah.
insects.
That sounds fun.
So we made one and we called him Fizzle Buzzy because that sounds like a great name for a bug.
This is great.
Right? And she had Fizzle Buzzy next to her bed on her nightstand. So that's why I called it that.
I love that.
Cool. Thank you.
You know, and I actually think that's such an interesting metaphor for just how you write in general, because your music is super catchy in the sense of like the chords that you choose and things like that, like catch me. And they actually remind me, I think I've told you this, of like 90s, early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s rock, which I love. I find it impressive that you were able to kind of like, it's not even nostalgia. It's like you maintain that sound, but let it evolve in its own way at the same time. But I like the idea of too, like as catchy as your songs are, and you have these great, like there goes less breath of rock and roll, like these great lines that just kind of live on their own. There's also a lot of stories in there though of like, if you dig a little deeper, then you understand where Fizzle Buzzy comes from. And you know, you have it's an authenticity that still lives within that. And I think it's because, I mean, you've taken a lot from your own life. Yeah,
absolutely.
Obviously in your writing. And I mean, you've talked about that shows, which I love too. I think it's really, especially all the loss that you've seen even very recently of losing siblings and parents and, you know, losing your dad so young and talking about that through your music, but just in like this bop of a way. I don't know. I can't, it's great. It's great.
It's, I think it's, you know, hopefully I'm not formulaic by any stretch, but it's certainly, it's certainly a part of who I am is looking at things, you know, for what they are and writing, you know, lyrically putting them in a space that isn't too literal or too direct and like, you know, my father died and this happened, but you know what I mean? It's like
my father died and I was really sad. I was really young.
Bebop-a-doo-doo-doo. Jazz hands. And so, and so I think that's, you know, I love pop music. I love, you know, I love those things that do draw you in, that are easily accessible. And I remember being told years ago by, you know, someone in the industry who had some weight to them and, you know, saying like, you know, well, maybe you shouldn't, you know, write so deeply or, you know, or such, you know, kind of dark subject matter. I was like, well, this is how I live, but also it's a purging as well. Yeah. Like I'm not a dark, you know me, I'm not a dark person.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's because
I
therapy.
Bleed myself out in songs.
Exactly. I purge it on record.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I can write a song about a serial killer and then play it live and smile because I'm having fun.
And stop killing people, finally, after years.
Finally. Yeah, that's a total autobiographical song was my murder song. So things of that nature.
Yeah, and you know, it's silly of that person to think that people don't feel that way. Like just because someone doesn't talk about it, you're going to tell me they haven't experienced depression or loss or some of these things in their life. It's like, of course they have. You know,
I think what, just sitting here thinking about it, I think where it comes from is like, you know, it's no secret I am a huge Beatles fan, and I'm a huge Beatles fan. And I've mentioned this in other interviews, but in this one I'll mention it as well, is that, you know, when my father passed so young, I was the youngest of 7 kids. And my brother passed away. I was 2, he was 7, who passed away 2 years prior. So it was a dark household, you know, but we also had they all had this tremendous sense of humor as well. But the music that was always played that everybody can agree on was the Beatles. So like by the time I was like 5, like I knew every Beatles lyric out there. Like you know, it's a great and their early stuff is great for kids. Twist and Shout.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and,
I was gonna say, talk about pop sensibility. Like I mean,
exactly.
They, like, created it. Yeah.
And then what spoke to me as I got older was REM. Like REM's early music. Like half the time you didn't know what the hell he was even singing about. You know,
it was all vibe.
All vibe. Like like try to figure out those lyrics to Koya Hoya. Like huh? You know, under the moral kiosk. Yeah, people talk like that. You know,
why do I relate to that even harder now? Though? Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So it is. It's that juxtaposition of like, you know, lyrics that make sense to me and make me feel good about what I'm doing, or the after effect of again like getting it out of my system, but putting it to music that I love. Like you know, I don't write super, you know, dour, dark music. Lyrically, content wise, arguably, you know, but
just don't listen too hard. No,
exactly.
No, do. And you know, and when I say too that your songs are catchy, that's actually like not the best descriptor. To me, they catch your ear and they're melodic in a way that's accessible, but you also have really unique chord structures, I think. Like the chords that you move to are fantastic. And I think that's what also makes you stand out, from, again, not formulaic is what I meant,
I appreciate it.
Put a bow on that. Absolutely
Right.
not. And then, paired with the lyricism that you bring to it, and it's great. It's all great. It's all a nice, beautiful package. And so speaking of package, November 29th, you have a new record coming out, Black Friday.
Yes.
It's not called Black Friday.
It's not called Black Friday.
What if it was? That'd be so on the nose.
It's called Headful of Hiss. So it's a 5-song EP. We're doing it on vinyl as well. I had intended to put it out at the actual EP release party last week, but some good things happened in my camp, working with Mark Cunningham at Red Light Management. So he's really, taken the helm and helping me, and we're working specifically with Trilix on the marketing side of things.
Yes.
So I'd love that I'm still tethered to an Iowa, company.
Absolutely.
We're in the thick of it together to see where all this goes. It's and the songs themselves, I think again are probably pretty reflective of how I write. There's a song called February Filled, which deals with, seasonal depression and, what we all deal with in the Midwest and I'm sure even outside of the Midwest, depending on where you live, and songs like Little Conversations about addiction and Shakes You, which is very much about, I have a friend who's since passed, Mike Hughes, Huge is what we call him, Huge or Hughesy. And he just had this amazing way about him where nothing really fazed him, and there's a line that starts, talks about, basically, I can't even quote it right now because I'm too nervous, but it's about like the cops showing up and he just, didn't faze him. He'd end up making friends with the cops, that kind of shit, or stuff, excuse me. And, so it's no one ever shakes you is the line. And I'm very envious of that,
Right.
And because I'm not that kind of a person, I'm,
Everything shakes me.
If I was writing it from my point of view, I'd be, exactly.
And that's a perfect song example of what I was talking about, because when folks listen to this record, Shakes You is like everyone sing along at the show,
right.
Because it's got such a lot. And I mean, I think you do that at the show. You're like, sing along, we're in this line, but it really is. It stays with you. No one ever shakes you. Like you can just keep. And it repeats.
Keep singing and keep
so, I mean, it's catchy, but when you think about what you're saying, I can relate to that, of like the people that just seem like everything can just roll right off their shoulders.
Yeah, and I think it's tough for folk. I mean, I think obviously a lot. I mean, I think the word anxiety and gets thrown around a lot. I mean, everybody is anxious.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the world we live in.
Yeah.
We're inundated with way too much going on from every angle. And so, and then throw kids in the mix and jobs and, expectations and the, partners and all that stuff. I mean, it's a tough gig to be a human being, and so therefore music is a great way to like find some way to relate, find someone who relates to you. That's obviously what got me into music and got me into, wanting to be a writer and not, I think performance is kind of a byproduct of it. I'd rather just, to be quite frank, I and we touched on this as well earlier, like I don't like to headline. I mean, and to be frank, if I could just stay home and make records without ever being, outside of the studio and having to perform live, I would absolutely be in heaven. Like not every author book, a novelist, not every novelist does a tour and reads their book, but it's like when you're a musician, it is kind of the expectation that you get up on stage and you do it. Yeah. Which you do well. I really do hope people see, and I'm sure you'll do more live performances. I plan on being told I'm doing
it. I'm planning on it, resistant. And that I have to do.
I have to do that. So no, I'm not resistant to it. It's just, it's not a natural, for me, it's not a natural thing. I mean, I love to watch those performers that you're like, that's their jam. Like they are so in their happy place.
Yeah.
And mine kind of has to be kind of jump started throughout the set, but again, like playing, like, you know, I look over at Ben Mars, who's smiling and rocking his butt off, and Jay, like Captain Rockstar, delivering, you know, and it's nice. Like I can kind of set myself into that scene and not be the focal point. And that's, I think that's a great part of working with this band in particular, is they all shine individually. Yeah. So it's not like me just standing up there with, you know, 3 or 4 of the knuckleheads who are just standing there and not really, you know, and it's not necessarily just like giving a performance. It's not, it's like feeling what you're doing and then allowing that to like manifest itself physically. Like that's to me, that's why I talk about blacking out. Like my body kind of comes to, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in this. No, so let's do it.
And those are the shows that if people think on some of the best concerts they've ever been to, I guarantee it was that moment when the artist is really in it, you know, and not just, especially as you get to that headlining level in these bigger artists. I mean, it becomes the day job, right? It becomes, I got to do the same thing every night. And, you know, I feel like in the theater, they deal with that too, where it's like, you're doing the show for the next 6 months. So I hope you like Boo Radley is you forever. Like, I don't know, whatever, you know, just like, that's you for now. So I think there's something special, or at least I tell myself this, since we're not, you know, my bands aren't gigging as much either. There is something really special about maybe playing fewer shows and giving yourself the time to like really spend time on these records and
absolutely
put the time in and turn around and put it out.
Well, and you know, that actually, it's something I've thought about. In fact, I heard Rick Rubin talk about this recently, and it's funny because I don't necessarily, you know a ton about him. I know
Rick.
No,
you don't know
just
Rick?
Tuesdays. I don't want to see him the rest of the week, but Tuesdays are fine.
Yeah, I see him on Wednesdays.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
We always talk about you.
Okay. Yeah, he just reports back to you on Wednesday.
Like,
all the stupid crap that fell out of Dick's head. What a moron.
But he waiting for your podcast, Rick and Dick, you know, on Tuesdays. Anyway, all right.
Rick and Dick. Write that down.
Tuesdays with Rick and Dick. Yeah.
But he makes a really good point, and I've said this for years, and I think there's a lot of great musicians, you know, not only in this community, but obviously in others, but in communities like Chicago and New York and LA. Like you're exposed to artists like who do this for a living, and you can make a living being an original artist in those communities because they're so much larger. You're not vying, you know, you don't have to like wait 3 months to play here or 6 months to play here.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think it's, you know, I know the value of like, I love what I do and how I do it, and that's the way I want to do it. And I'm not going to make a living just doing that alone. And what Rick mentions, which I'm in line with, is that Rick, I call him my first name. No, it's like having a day job, normalizing, like letting the songs like percolate, having real experiences. I think it's got to be tough.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I will work as long as I can, and I'm more than what will have to. I mean, the likelihood of like suddenly I become, you know, a chaperone from this EP is not going to happen. But I wish more artists would think of that. Like it's not a burden to do your job. I mean, no one wants to necessarily do that, but it's also,
no one wants to work. We know that. We all agree on that. But it's what you're saying about having a real life is usually where you get those songs out of you. Yeah. It's not, you know, touring. You can write a tour song or two. Like you can write about being on the road.
Yeah. You can Bob Seger up all day long.
Yeah. You know, but usually it's the mundane experiences, I feel like, that a lot of times kind of pique your imagination of like, wow, what if this went horribly wrong?
Absolutely.
Let's sing about that. Yeah.
And I think, and that's what I'm kind of part of my point here in this particular community is that, you know, I understand like wanting to play and like, you know, bands are playing in like 5 or 6 different, you know, bands, so they don't have to have a day gig. And I just think, but what if you had a day gig and then you did the music that you really wanted to do? And I only say this because I have these conversations with people. This isn't a judgment by any stretch. You know, I'm just like, just get a day gig that like, or a remote gig. I mean, there's, as we both know, in a remote setting, like, you know, especially like you can make a really good, let's say like a customer success person, like you're just on the phone, you know, you're making good money. They're providing you what you need. And then you don't have to eat up your time learning someone else's songs. Yeah, right. You can use your time to work on your stuff and then playing those shows, not every weekend, but, you know, I like playing sporadically. Again, if something happens that forces me to be, you know, more present and have to cut bait from my day thing, then that means I did something right.
Yeah, right,
you know?
right. But that means you're enjoying the journey, I feel like, of course we all, the Chappell Roan example, actually, that I think you said something earlier and I was going to bring her up because I heard a clip recently of her at one of her live shows. I'm sorry, I can't remember which, but she just said right on stage, like, sorry guys, I'm having a struggle day. Like I'm paraphrasing, but she was basically like, I got famous so fast and so hard, right? It just went like boom. That she's like, sometimes it's a little too much. And she's saying this on stage, and I was just like, this is what, aside from her true vocal talent and kind of authenticity, like having that vulnerability on stage to say that. Because again, what she's doing is like the Olympics of being a musician.
Oh,
like you
yeah.
are, it's at an athletic level,
Yeah,
I would say.
absolutely.
And so it is like, when do you get those moments to breathe and appreciate where you are, or like build up another artist and collaborate with them and just, I think it's okay to have, I'm trying to tell myself this, Dick.
Yeah,
this
I
is
get
really
it.
more for me.
I'm here for you.
It's okay
There's
to
a
have
couch right there.
black space. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to have nothing a little bit so that space can be filled.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's dealing, clearly there's backlash of her saying like, kind of don't call me Kaylee. Like, first of all, that's her choice, to like how she wants to be addressed. It's no different than a pronoun or whatever.
People
it's like
yeah.
They could call her by her first name,
So Lady Gaga is like not a good example of that. I mean, for years, she's like, don't call me Stephanie.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so weird to be like, I don't think anybody's had this kind of overnight thing, like since like Elvis.
Yeah.
That was
at this level.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially among the din of like all that is out there, and to be able to like shoot straight through it and past it and high above it. Like it has to be daunting. And this isn't somebody who's been doing this for 30 years. This is someone who's, been doing 10 years? I don't know.
Right.
And that's a lot to take on. So like back off, man. Let her breathe, let her do her thing. Enjoy her music. If you don't, go home.
See, that's why we're not famous, because just people would talk too much crap, and we just don't need that.
Yeah.
So we just decided, let's just stay right in the middle. Let's just say maybe on the upper bottom.
Yeah.
Really.
Let me build my 401k. Let me just build my 401k, play the shows every now and then. I'll be fine.
I am excited, though, I got to see a sneak peek of what you're doing here at Trilix in the live room, and it is gorgeous, and I can't wait to see that, doing some videos and things like that. And so 5-song EP, Headful of Hiss.
Yes.
Coming out November 29th, everybody. Yeah. So mark it on your... It's Black Friday. I mean, it's a good way to remember it.
Right. Exactly.
Just put it in the shopping cart with all the other crap you guys are getting.
We'll do something a little special on that day, I'm sure. So, no, I'm excited. Already thinking about another EP that I want to do in the spring, to kind of have a full length record over a year amount of time, because it's been a spell since 2019 hit, and then obviously, or 2019 was minus Thieves, and then COVID hit, so that we lost a couple of years right there. So I know I'm behind the 8 ball when it comes to releasing something, and that's kind of why I'm like, I feel like I need to play some catch up, but I'm also super excited. Brian Vanderpool did such a beautiful job in the studio, with all components. I mean, he plays drums on, he's playing guitar on, he's doing percussion.
That guy does everything. Good person to know.
I secretly don't love him.
It's the people we hate.
Exactly. And Tanner Taylor coming in and killing it on keys.
Right.
And of course, Ben Mars is on a couple of tracks, and Paul Ginnivan also on bass on a couple of tracks. So, and then Patrick Riley on strings, who plays cello, violin, and viola.
Incredible.
And just makes these beautiful layers. And I'm just such a dork for strings.
That's something you've had on all your records forever.
Most of them. Minus Thieves is probably Minus Thieves and my very first one, I think, are the only two that I didn't have strings on. And I just love it. I mean, I love that, I just love that. I love the layering and the
Patrick
texture.
Specifically does.
Right. And he knows it's not just layering and texture, right? Yeah. It's like beautiful parts that really stick in, And
okay, I'm getting excited now for this. And so COVID did slow the roll for a lot of artists, but it also changed how we download music, like how we consume music.
Absolutely.
Because we talk about this a lot we really value full length records. Like we like that. A lot of times that's how it works out. But now, I mean, we put out 3 songs that we got to record here at Trilix.
Which are fantastic.
We're like, we just want to, thank you. That's not why I mentioned them, but thank you. But you know, we're like, we have these, they're ready to go, and we just want to put them out. And people, I go back and forth, I guess, because I like the sort of immediacy and the ease of like, oh, I've got 5 ready to go in the hopper, let's get them out. But also the, you know, having a full-length album and the vinyl with all the songs that, you know, I'm also a fan of that. So I'm kind of caught in the in-between. But
well, I mean, historically speaking, like that's, I mean, when music, you know, a lot of times it was just a single, you know,
yeah,
it just cut it on
I've
wax,
talked to my
right?
dad about this, you know,
Absolutely,
like back in the day.
and it wasn't until later, really into the, you know, to the 60s, right? I mean, I can't really speak, you know, totally as a historian, but like full length albums were a thing, especially in the 60s and the 70s. Obviously, then going into the 80s, and I think then EPs kind of started popping their heads up in the 90s. And you know, I also feel like it takes time, it takes money, especially to like do that. And now you have the ability to do music a lot faster, so you can like put it on wax like immediately. And why not?
Right.
Why not? Especially in the moment, because you're so excited. And I think it takes time to put together, you know, 10 to 12 or, you know, or if you're Steven Wilson Jr., 22 amazing songs.
You're Taylor Swift. Yeah, 800 songs.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's great. You know, someone gave me some crap recently about putting out an EP, and I was like, what? Like, do you have the money to front it for me to be able to do it? Because that is, and I'll be, you know, I'll kind of confession here. It is twofold. It's the finances. I didn't want to do a Kickstarter and rely on everybody else to support me. Second to that is music has been a kind of an abusive relationship, and to put the kind of money and energy and resources and, you know, emotion into these things. Yeah. I had kind of exhausted myself after Minus Thieves and felt like I'm just going to give a snippet or like an idea and like, let's see where this goes. I kind of got selfish with music, and I just thought, you know, I'm not gonna give up all of the goods right now, and not necessarily it's good. I'm just saying I don't want to do a full length. I don't want to, and it's a lot to put something out and like, oh, that's a cool record, and then, you know, put out another one in 2 to 3 years.
That's the thing. Breaking it up this way actually allows you to maintain some consistency of like being relevant again in 6 months, or, you know, just. People, that's when they tend to pay more attention, right? When you're doing a release, you know, and it, I mean, so there's a method to that as well. Like,
absolutely. And you should just put it out when you want to put it out, you know, and how you want to put it out. And I thought, you know, and this is someone who's in, you know, in the industry to some degree. And I just thought, well, that's a really ignorant way of looking at what artists should be doing. First of all, artists should be doing whatever the hell they want to do, and however the hell they want to do it. Yeah, exactly. And just and from that, like, you know, the momentum that's kind of quickly happened just in, you know, behind the curtain with Mark coming on board and Trilix coming on board and some friends of mine who are investing and helping me out tremendously. Like, that's huge. To be able to do it and do it at the level that I may be doing it now. Again, like, I think it's kind of my play to decide like how I want to do it and how often. And this only just, it's less daunting, as you can imagine, right? To just like, oh, I'm going to do a song and not look at it as like, I have to come up with a, you know, what's the record? Do I do a concept? Is this going to be like some kind of theme or whatever?
It allows it to come to you instead of you. I mean, it's okay, I think, to search for music in yourself. Like some days I'm like, I want to write a song today. So let's think on that. Other times it's like, I can't not. It came out of me because something happened, or, you know. And I think having that space, having that cushion of allowing creativity to kind of foster around you and soaking that up and then letting some of it out, you know, how you want.
Absolutely.
Having that control.
And focusing on that one nugget of something that you really want to eke out to its best, you know, no pressure, no deadline as far as like, you know, okay, well, this is going to, you know, this is one that goes in the hopper for the larger project.
No, that can slow you down. Absolutely. It's, we, you know, talk about that all the time, especially when you are balancing a day job and you can't just take a week off to hit the studio and, you know, just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, I started recording this August of last year, and we were finished, you know, mixing by the mid December. And I think after, you know, 2 swipes at mastering, which great mastering, Vault mastering out of Arizona, they did it, and it was like, so the record's been ready, and I've been,
Right.
chomping at the bit, and, gone through some personal stuff this spring that obviously held everything back. And so the timing was like, let's just put it out. And then it was funny where Mark's like, that's not enough time. And I was like, okay, so what's the remedy? I don't know. And I was like, well, let's just do a QR code. People come to the show, they can listen to it. They can't download it, but at least they can take it with them and hear it, So I thought that was a good remedy up until
that's the thing that technology, for better or for worse, that's what we're afforded now. Like you have the option of doing that, of having kind of pre-release, listening parties, essentially, is what that was. And no, it's fantastic.
Well, good. Thank you.
I think it worked well. Dick, it's been such a pleasure. I mean,
Thank you,
obviously we're pals, but I love getting to dive a little deeper and just hear more of your story. Cannot wait to hear the new EP, truly, coming out. Headful of Hiss, coming out November 29th.
Yes.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. Thank you, Trilix. Good.
Oh, yay! I don't know what time it is. In the Round is produced and recorded at Trilix Studio. Remember to subscribe to In the Round wherever podcasts are found.
Minus these, you deserve to breathe. Minus these.